Way before I was even into anime, some of the earliest memories I have in my brain are from my GameCube at my old house. Before I could utter words correctly, I would see my brother play this game, and he played with this guy who had very spiky hair and an orange jumpsuit. I don't know what it was, but this got me hooked onto this series called Dragon Ball Z. I'm not sure if you heard of it, it's pretty obscure. This was literally my first interaction with Dragon Ball, and for a while, I didn't even know Dragon Ball was animated. I vividly remember the shock on my face when I saw this Funimation bumper and saw Krillin and Goku as 2D drawings. My small brain couldn't even believe it. But fast forward a couple of years and I moved to my new house, and for Christmas, we got a white PS2. As a kid, it felt like I could play anything, but there was this one game I remember seeing. I saw it in GameStop and I was like, yo, I need this.
Don't get me salivating and fantasizing about.
And that's where I got my very own copy of Dragon Ball Z Budokai. One of the first games I remember playing from start to finish. So today, as a grown adult, I wanted to see how good the game actually was. But before we keep going, gather all your energy and hit the subscribe button. If you still have some key left, go check out the second channel where we stream and react and stuff. Just a little fair warning, you might have too much fun and you might become obsessed with me, but okay, I won't hold you up. Dragon Ball Z Budokai was released on PlayStation 2 in November of 2002. It came out a year later on GameCube, which is the version I'll be playing.
Be the king of the pirates!
The game starts from the Saiyan Saga and ends with the Cell Saga. Another thing, I didn't know there was a Buu Saga for a very long time. I knew about Super Saiyan 3, I knew about fusions, and the movies post the Buu Saga, but I didn't know it was there. Keep calm though, I was like 6, so relax. This game does have a couple of other modes too, but they all boil down to just battling, so not much. So let's start off with the story mode though, since that's the first thing we're presented with. So of course, we start off with the Saiyan Saga, where Raditz comes to Earth and steals Gohan. Blah blah blah, you know the story. This part of the game is where most men my age experience gamer rage for the very first time. So there's a section where you have to line up Piccolo's special beam cannon, and Goku has to keep Raditz still, but in order to do that, you have to rotate the stick left and right. Okay, it may not sound very hard, and I'll admit, it's not. But as a kid, I didn't know my left from right very well, and this was fucking torture. This is pretty much the end of the Raditz saga, and it quickly moves on to Nappa and Vegeta coming to Earth. There's no training in Otherworld or anything, we just kinda hear that Goku did it. And that kinda segues into my first real problem with the game. This story is about an hour and a half long, and that's including the fights I had trouble with. And I'll get to those later. As a kid, this game felt like it took me days to complete, and I feel like it actually did take me days to complete. There's not a lot of content in this game, and I remember getting a ton of hours out of it though. I'm not sure if it was because I really liked Dragon Ball games at the time, or I was just bad at games. My other game theory is that I had a short attention span that made everything seem longer, but you know, it actually wasn't that long. But this game was a nice afternoon. Heavy emphasis on nice, by the way, and that's not including the what if content, which I'll get into later. One thing I do like about this game is how much they try to replicate the anime kind of feel. For example, the speed lines, the dramatic camera angles, and the small details like Krillin wearing his hat as soon as he steps on the Namek. Like, they didn't have to include the hat model, but then you can tell the devs really wanted to make a good game. I really like when there's like a slow motion moment. The one off the top of my head is when Goku got struck by the special beam cannon. This is exactly how I imagined it, and I think they nailed this. Also, when they try to morph the models in order to match like the manga panels, I know for a fact it was a pain in the ass to model Goku's hair, but then they make it sway in the wind or point up when he goes Super Saiyan. But damn, it looks good. But on the inverse of that, there are some hardware limitations, like the iconic Goku and Vegeta pose. This scene was pretty hard, but they're standing like 2 feet away from each other. I'm not gonna give a ton of flack because again, they're working with what they got, but sometimes you can tell the devs were kinda held back, and I'm assuming it was because of hardware limitations. Like, the stages in general feel a little uninspired. If they aren't flat, it's just hills. And I don't blame them because at the end of the day, you aren't counting the blades of grass, you're here to fight. So getting back to the story, the Frieza saga ended up being shorter than you'd probably expect. I think it's the longest arc in the game technically, but then it's about like 30 minutes. But honestly, I think I ended up enjoying this arc the most. I remember this part of the game the most where Goku goes Super Saiyan. It looks really good for a game that came out on the PS2 and GameCube. Although I don't think the music fit for the fight was actually pretty fun, and as a kid, it was super rewarding to get to. But as an adult, it's a little lackluster. There's only like one gimmick for the final bosses in each arc, and that gimmick ended up being used for Raditz. When it really comes down to it, I can think of some gimmicky minigames that can be used for the other two bosses. For Frieza, it could be some sort of like Ki Blast minigame where right before Goku gives him his energy it plays out, or have him just trying to escape the planet. With Cell, a simple Beam Clash minigame would suffice. Like, let's be real, it's like the most prominent moment that everybody thinks about when it comes to the Cell games. I think they kinda dropped the ball here. And last but not least, the Cell Saga. This one felt pretty short, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until you get to the final fight in the fucking game, dude. And they don't really give you any indication or tell you that this is the last boss in the game. They just make them unbelievably hard. Again, I don't know if I was really good at this game or not because I don't remember this fight being this hard. Cell is one of the hardest AIs in the game. And looking back, they don't really tell you how hard these fights are. You're just supposed to kind of know how hard these fights are, you know? This was the only fight that gave me any sort of trouble.
Why you hitting a woman? Shut the fuck up, nigga, and watch this goddamn combo.
He just kept freaking cheesing me and wouldn't let me get any time to recover. And then when I be on the ground, he used Ki Blast to take away more health. Mind you, I'm already missing a bar of health. And then he has a way longer reach than me. And on top of that, I don't have the most powerful PC in the world, let's be real. So I'd lag throughout the fight sometimes. This is the only time I felt like I was truly at a disadvantage. But after you beat Cell, the game is finished. Well, not all the way. So this game does something real dumb where you have to go back and do the different story missions from different points of view. Like in the Saiyan Saga, you have to go back and do portions as Piccolo. That probably would have coincided perfectly with the regular missions. Now I have a theory. It's like they're trying to make you play the game twice. Now, I'm not gonna fault the devs for this. Actually, I am. This is dumb. Most of these take place right before or right after Goku comes, so they fit in seamlessly with the story. It's almost like they're numbered in order when you try to go back and play the missions. But once you complete those missions that you haven't already completed, you get what-if scenarios. And I won't lie, they kinda suck. They're all kind of boss rush modes where you just go through a gauntlet of people and you get the what-if ending. The Vegeta one, he goes Super Saiyan, Frieza destroys Namek and becomes Eternal, and I don't even know what Cell's is, cause I couldn't care less if we're being honest, after the shit he did. But let's take a step back. I haven't talked about the controls in this game at all, so let's do that. So you have three main buttons, Ki Blast, Punch, and Kick. The punches and kicks both have auto combos, so if you press them, it's a pretty effective way of winning. But then to do special moves, you have to do a specific button combination. For example, a Kamehameha would be P times 4 plus E. Now you're probably wondering why I just spoke in algebra, but that's how the game speaks. I'm assuming it's a language that all consoles adopted, so they don't have to go in and meticulously change every button they're bound to. All dandy and good until you realize that some of these moves aren't even that practical. So most of the time I just end up punching and kicking, and 9 times out of 10 that gets me through most fights. The bots aren't particularly hard, but I feel that some are way harder than others, but overall the game is pretty easy. Like I said, I beat the main story in like an hour, and then like another 45 to an hour for the extra missions and the what if scenarios. But outside of the story, what else is there to do? Well, there's a multiplayer mode and a tournament mode. So if you want to have any sort of fun with the best moves and all the characters, you can't do that right away. So in order to get the moves you unlock from story mode, you have to buy them from the shop. And then you quickly realize you have no money. So how do you get money? Well, you play a tournament mode and that's where you can get money. I'm not even gonna lie, this is probably just a way to get you to play the game longer, and this definitely worked on me as a kid because I remember most of my time after the story, I spent it on the tournament modes. And then the tournament modes, they unlock you Sandman and Hercule, something I remember not being able to do for some reason. And that is pretty much all of the game. Is this game as good as I remember? I might even say that it's way better than I remember. Visually, this game looks ahead of its time. I am playing on an upscaled resolution, but even so, this game looks good. I love how stylized it tries to be and the effort put in to make this game look aesthetically pleasing. I was obsessed with how good the game looked as a kid, and more than 20 years later, I can still appreciate it. The soundtrack was so nostalgic, and I really enjoyed some of the tracks, and I even used some for videos. all of the sound effects and voice lines trigger something in my brain and it tells me that life was good. Although the controls were pretty eccentric to say the least, they tried to make a system that worked for a fighting game, and what's here can definitely be improved on with some more time. I'm sure they probably fix these issues in later entries, but I'm not sure because I didn't know they existed as a kid. But if I did, trust, I would have been in there like swimwear. I feel like when we get new things, we tend to forget about how good the previous things were. Right now, people have their eyes set on Sparking Zero, so people aren't going to talk about Fighters or Xenoverse. So it makes you think they're going to look at the first Dragon Ball game on PS2. I feel like this game was a blueprint, but nobody ever talks about it. Whenever you hear people talk about retro Dragon Ball games, you only ever hear about Tenkaichi 3. That's like, shut the fuck up about it, jeez! But this is one of my favorite Dragon Ball games, and I'm glad this was my Dragon Ball game. It introduced me to the series, and without this game, I don't even think this channel would exist. So thank you, Dragon Ball Z Budokai. You hold a very special place in my heart. But damn, fuck that self-fight!